Good evening, I'm Klaudia Czerwińska and you're watching World News Tonight live from Warsaw. This treaty is an expression of the strong rapprochement between Poland and France, not only in the sphere of the economy, industry, or modern technology, but also in energy and defense, said French President Emmanuel Macron upon signing the Franco-Polish treaty on Friday. This opens a new chapter in cooperation between the two countries. We'll have more on that in just a moment, but first, let's take a look at tonight's headlines. Russia's victory parade struck by notable absences as heads of state skipped the event taking place in Moscow. European leaders show support for a special tribunal investigating the crime of aggression against Ukraine. Expectations ahead for the pontificate of the newly elected Pope, Leo XIV. The first Franco-Polish treaty since 1991 was signed today in the French city of Nancy. The treaty provides enhanced mutual security guarantees and cements close defense cooperation between the two countries. Zuzanna Jurek breaks down the treaty and its significance in her latest report.
This treaty is an expression of the strong rapprochement between Poland and France, not only in the sphere of the economy, industry and modern technology, but also in energy and defense. It is also confirmation of our common vision for the future of Europe.
These were the words of the French President Emmanuel Macron, who for the first time will grant an interview to Polish television. His statement refers to the Franco-Polish bilateral treaty ratified on Friday, May 9th. It is the first such agreement since 1991 which seeks to strengthen the friendship and cooperation between the two nations. France has previously ratified 3 of the so-called premium treaties with Italy, Spain and Germany. Friday's Nancy Treaty is, however, Paris's first mutual defense treaty with a country which doesn't border France.
We made no secret of the fact that this treaty will greatly strengthen the entire structure of European stability. Together with Poland and our European partners, we decided to take a more active role in bearing the responsibility of our defense.
Importantly, the politicians highlighted that Nancy Treaty strives to bolster existing multilateral defense cooperation agreements, including the NATO alliance.
We have agreed that we will slowly realize the preference for the purchase of weapons in Europe. We also sent a very clear signal, because we included here the clause of joint assistance, which is an extension of our cooperation under NATO and the EU.
The treaty is also meant to assist with some of the most pressing challenges faced by Europe, including the diminishing commitment of the Trump administration to global collective security.
I believe in a defensive Europe which is not an alternative to NATO, but which is strengthened within NATO. Within NATO, we have American soldiers. 1/3 of the soldiers in the eastern flank are American. If they withdrew, then we would be able to handle it.
Experts too highlight the driving factors contributing to the cooperation.
Bilateral cooperation in arms industry, in defense industry. And we're talking about things that Poland wants and would like in this relationship and things that the French would like. And, 2 things come to mind. One on the Polish side, which is, somehow getting under France's nuclear umbrella, although that's really, really difficult. And from the French side, there's a big ask, is that Poland doesn't buy as many US weapons.
Back in March, the two sides floated the idea that Poland might be brought under France's nuclear umbrella. This would mean that some of France's nuclear warheads would be stationed in Poland, similarly to the way in which the US's nuclear umbrella operates. On Friday, though not explicitly stated, French leader also hinted at the fact that this greater cooperation might expand to nuclear deterrence too.
You know that when it comes to nuclear deterrence, we do not speak in detail on this subject, but we have a doctrine. It has existed since the 1960s. Since the time of General de Gaulle, we also have a European dimension. This means that when we decide what our vital interests are, we take into account the interests of our allies.
Apart from cooperation in security and defense, industrial partnerships are also expected to intensify.
Our economic cooperation will be more intensive. We will have a bilateral economic forum, an annual dialogue when it comes to civilian nuclear infrastructure, and strengthen cooperation, especially in defense and transport.
Which some experts highlight serves to create greater cohesion between the two allies.
I think that it shows really great relations between Poland and France, and indeed in this treaty it will be a lot of about the defense and military aspects, but also about economy, but also culture, science cooperation, and so on. So for me it will be, the step further to work between France and Poland.
The symbolism surrounding the signing of the treaty, Europe Day, a celebration of unity and peace, reflects the renewed French and Polish commitments to one another. For TVP World, Zuzanna Jurek.
24 heads of state attended the annual Victory Parade in Moscow, a textbook display of Russian propaganda in action. And even though the spotlight was stolen by heavyweight attendees such as China's President Xi Jinping, much controversy was caused by the presence of Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico, the only EU leader who made his way to Moscow. Kazimierz Łysiak has the details in his report.
In Moscow, the annual Victory Parade has come and gone. And while it's meant as a celebration of the end of the Second World War in Europe and the defeat of Nazi Germany, the same tanks and armored vehicles are now invading Ukraine. An occupation reminiscent not only of Nazi Germany, but the Soviet Union itself.
We in Poland know it very well, because 1st of September 1939 marks the date that Nazi Germany attacked Poland, but 17 days later, on the 17th of September 1939, it was the Soviet Union, without actually formally claiming the state of war between Poland and Soviet Union, decided to attack absolutely unprovoked.
The list of foreign guests at this year's parade included some of Russia's closest allies, including China's Xi Jinping and North Korea's Kim Jong-un, as well as a major BRICS partner in the shape of Brazilian President da Silva. And it was China which was especially visible at the parade.
For one, you have an enormous amount of Chinese troops who will be marching through Red Square lockstep with Russian troops. So just the symbolism there is quite telling.
But there was also a notable lack of other partners. India's Narendra Modi was not in attendance due to the recent military clashes with Pakistan, while Azerbaijan's absence is putting question marks over its relations with Moscow.
They understand in reality that they are more or less isolated, but if they can show cosmetically, at least the optics, that they are not so isolated, that goes a long way.
And yet it was the presence of two European leaders which caused the most controversy. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić was accompanied by the only EU leader at the celebrations, Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico.
Attending the victory parade of those who bomb cities, hospitals and kindergartens, who for 3 years have caused the deaths of more than 1 million people or serious injuries. Attending this parade is an act of shame. It's a disgrace.
To go to Moscow and to shake hands with the person responsible for these murders, for these wars, for all these crimes that are happening right now, it's for me really disgusting feeling.
Show me your friends and I will tell you who you are. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas echoed that sentiment during an informal summit in Warsaw ahead of the parade.
Member states have a lot of questions. Who is your friend with whom you are really dealing with?
The Slovakian leader hasn't taken these comments well, telling Kaja Kallas in a letter posted on social media that she has no right to criticize him, while the Slovakian Prime Minister appeals hell-bent on keeping up good relations with Vladimir Putin.
If someone tries to build another Iron Curtain, I guarantee you, I'll grab a hacksaw and start cutting through it.
Even Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, who has long been an outspoken ally to the Russian president, knows that attending the victory parade would not do him any favors domestically.
For the Hungarian people, the end of World War II had a different significance than for other countries that participated in it.
And it's no wonder. The end of the Second World War in Central Eastern Europe meant the beginning of a new regime, the Soviet one. Hundreds of thousands of people were killed because of Soviet and communist repressions in countries such as Poland, Slovakia, the Czech Republic and Hungary after 1945. Today, Russia continues to celebrate its Soviet past, both in symbols and in actions. For TVP World, I'm Kazimierz Łysiak.
Special Tribunal for the Crime of Aggression. This is the name of the initiative supported by European leaders who gathered in Lviv to call for justice for the crimes committed by Russia. This tribunal will ensure that those most responsible for the aggression against Ukraine are held accountable, said Kaja Kallas, Vice President of the European Commission. Sonia Gatabishchan has more on the initiative in her report.
European leaders gathered in the Ukrainian city of Lviv on Friday in a show of political support for the establishment of the Special Tribunal for the Crime of Aggression against Ukraine.
This tribunal will ensure that those most responsible for the aggression against Ukraine are held accountable.
Crime of aggression is basically defined as the initiation of a use of force when one state decides to plan and initiate an act of aggression into another country.
The tribunal will target senior political and military leaders responsible for the crime of aggression against Ukraine.
There must be accountability, especially accountability for war. Because if even one war goes unpunished, more wars will follow.
To date, another tribunal, the International Criminal Court, has issued an arrest warrant against Vladimir Putin
for the alleged war crimes of deportation of children from Ukrainian occupied territories into the Russian Federation.
The ICC prosecutes 4 types of crimes. The crime of aggression is one of them, but unlike the remaining 3 crimes,
the crime of aggression requires that the 2 states involved, so the victim state but also the aggressor state, have given consent to the ICC for it to exercise its jurisdiction.
And the problem with that is that the Russian Federation has never given jurisdiction generally to the ICC, and more specifically regarding the crime of aggression. The new tribunal is intended to fill that gap. According to the Ukrainian foreign minister, the long-term target would be the Troika, that is the Russian president, prime minister and minister of foreign affairs.
All of them are international war criminals. And actually, this tribunal is being set up to pass appropriate sentences in the future.
However, according to the Council of Europe, which is the central body under which the tribunal would be set up,
the Troika members could only be brought to trial before the special tribunal if they were no longer in power or their immunity had been waived.
Nonetheless, the Council of Europe also noted that, quote, international law is evolving and personal immunity is not a carte blanche for impunity. So far, the establishment of the tribunal is supported by approximately 40 states, and the international community is taking note of both the tribunal's backers and those withholding support.
Suspending U.S. participation in the process of establishing the tribunal is one of about a dozen important concessions that the new U.S. administration has made to Vladimir Putin. I fail to see a single concession on the part of Putin.
Radosław Sikorski added that he hopes that Donald Trump will start pressuring Putin to become more reasonable through negative incentives as well. Against this backdrop, Volodymyr Zelensky announced that Ukraine will host a Coalition of the Willing meeting on Saturday. For TVP World, I'm Sonia Gatabishchan.
The election of a new pope is always a historic moment, and this occasion was no exception. For the very first time in history, the cardinals chose an American-born to be the new Bishop of Rome. Our correspondent Alex Cadier has been covering the conclave in the Vatican for us. Good evening, Alex. So, how was Pope Leo XIV chosen, and what does this selection mean for the Catholic Church?
Well, buonasera from just above St. Peter's Square. Of course, a historic choice of the first American pontiff ever those looking at perhaps wanting the Catholic Church to exert influence in the United States. But it's important to remember that Pope Leo XIV served as a missionary for 14 years in Chile, and of course is half Chilean, so there will be of course a connection with South America in this new Pope as well. Let's hear from a Chilean Cardinal Fernando Chomali Garib, who is also the Archbishop of Santiago de Chile. Let's listen to what he thinks the Pope will do soon.
The first thing that I expect is that he is himself. He is a humble man. He knows the church very well. He knows the Latin American church very well. He has a strong closeness with poor people. Also, he knows the world, because he was a superior of the Augustinian order for many years. So he's a cultured man, and above all, a man of prayer. So I'm very happy.
Well, that's the perspective from one of the cardinals, but also hundreds, if not thousands, of Americans were here in Rome to see this new pontiff, this first American pontiff. I spoke to one of them, Spencer from Chicago. So is the Pope. You'll see in the clip that Spencer was wearing the Chicago flag on his hat, and I asked him what it meant for him to have a Pope from Chicago. Let's have a listen.
I would say that in America, we call it blue collar. A tough guy, tough worker. He will get the job done and he will keep trying. Midwestern, just tough. He will be able to get it done. Whatever the inclusiveness, whatever the project he has, he'll work with everyone to get it done.
Well, Spencer from Chicago there, reflecting on what Chicago's values might bring to St. Peter's Basilica behind me. But clearly the decision for the next Pope is a political one. We now have an understanding of what happened behind the scenes. There was a bit of a deadlock between the now Pope Leo XIV and Pietro Parolin, one of the top advisors to Pope Francis. And we understand that Parolin decided to step down from the race and put his support behind the new pontiff as it is. But of course, there are politics behind these things, politics behind the choice of an American pope, and therefore, what do the experts say about that? Well, Leszek Jardziecki, who is the editor-in-chief of Liberté, was talking to TVP World's Adam Yasser on Face to Face about exactly that. Let's have a listen to what he said.
Being American, it seems Catholic Church decided to fight for the soul of United States of America.
Ah, so politics.
I do believe that it was a really case, as soul and maybe the money as well, because the Catholic Church in the US is really influential.
TVP World's Adam Yasser there with So Politics, and that is absolutely a lot of what happened behind the scenes. But it's not to say that Leo XIV's politics are aligned with President Trump either. He has opposed refugee bans in the United States. He has shared articles critical of Vice President J.D. Vance's position on how inclusive the Catholic Church should be. Now, on some of the issues, he will be seen as a progressive pope, as a reforming pope, one who will continue in the traditions of Pope Francis, the directions of Pope Francis. But in some of the traditions we've seen, he has gone back to some of the traditional rites and rituals of the Catholic Church. When he came out on that window at St. Peter's Basilica behind me, he was wearing the traditional gowns that Pope Francis had gotten rid of when he came out as Pope. So perhaps more traditional in the form, but when it comes to the politics behind the Catholic Church, you can expect another progressive Pope here in the Vatican for many years to come.
Thank you so much. That was Alex Cadier reporting live from the Vatican. The capital of Moldova, Chisinau, hosted Europe Day on Friday as the country hopes to join the European Union by 2030. On that same day, another event took place in the capital, a Russian-style Victory Day march where many wore Russian and USSR symbols. Joining me now is our correspondent Paweł Trzaskowski, who is in Chisinau. So, Paweł, what do these two events tell us about Moldova's geopolitical orientation? I mean, you've been there among the crowds. You've observed it for yourself.
Well, Claudia, in the background you can hear a concert that concludes Europe Day celebrations in Chisinau. Europe Day that has become a state holiday in Moldova in 2017, a sign of ambitions of Moldova to become a European member, a member of the European Union by 2030. And this is why this year Marta Kos, EU's Commissioner for Enlargement, was here on May the 9th as well. However, as you rightly mentioned, another celebration was observed in Chisinau on the very same day, a Victory Day march resembling a Victory Day parade from Moscow. I was actually there and I asked some of the participants about the significance of this event for them. Please listen to them.
For me, this is Victory Day. I came for my grandfather who liberated Moldova from fascist occupation. My grandfather went through the whole journey, from the Winter War to this one. This is the biggest holiday in our family because my uncle burned alive in a tank near Leningrad. My uncle liberated Berlin as a young man. My mother received a medal for labor valor from 1941-45. This is a huge, huge holiday.
We celebrate, we honor. We are proud of our ancestors who gave us a peaceful sky above our heads.
And this Russian sentiment is exploited by Russian propaganda and Russian malign interference. Actually, today, Vladimir Putin addressed a letter to Moldovans assuring them of a brotherhood-like nature of relations between Moldova and Russia. Please take a look at a fragment of this letter.
Today it is very important to resolutely resist any attempts to distort our common glorious history, to sow enmity between Russians and Moldovans. This is our moral duty to the generation of victors.
And the duality of this Moldovan outlook on geopolitics becomes evident not only on days like today, but also during the elections. Last year, during the presidential elections, a pro-European candidate, Maia Sandu, narrowly defeated a pro-Russian candidate, Alexander Stoyanoglu. And another test for pro-European ambitions of Moldova and its resilience when it comes to countering Russian propaganda this autumn with general elections. Back to you, Claudia.
Thank you so much, Pavel. That was Pavel Trzaskowski reporting live from Chisinau. And now, moving on. The Victory Day parade in Moscow has come to an end. The event, a highly choreographed show, was designed to create an illusion that Russia is anything but isolated from the rest of the world. In truth, Victory Day has become more of a propaganda exercise, and this time was no different. With Xi Jinping as the guest of honor, many leaders invited failed to show up. And why is this? How close is now China and Russia? Velina Chakarova, founder of FACE Geopolitical Consultancy, joins me now to discuss today's events and their meaning for European affairs. Good evening, Velina. Thank you so much for joining me here on the program.
Thank you for the invitation.
So, looking at the events of today, how would you assess this year's parade? Business as usual, or there was something that truly caught your attention that was different?
Well, first and foremost, if we take a look at the last 10 years of bilateral relationship between Russia and China, and more specifically between Xi Jinping and Putin, of course, we can claim that it's part of this kind of 40-plus meanwhile track of bilateral visits. And in that sense, it's business as usual. But at the same time, this visit has been quite symbolic and certainly quite strategic if you consider also the precarious situation between China and United States right now. And what comes next on the Xi Jinping's agenda is definitely the US-China trade negotiations in Switzerland. So it was very important from Chinese perspective to show to the world that China has one quite a predictable and solid partner, and vice versa. Same goes for Russia. So it's not just symbolic in terms of celebrations of Victory Day parade and letting PLA troops parade there for a second time, once in 2015 and now the second time 10 years later. But also from Putin's perspective, of course, it's quite strategic to show to the world that the second most important economic power in the world is deepening the relationship with Russia.
Mm-hmm. As we mentioned in our report and in the intro for this interview, many leaders have not shown up. Why do you think that is? Do you think that this is some sort of a particular message that they were trying to send?
Many leaders have not shown up because they are, for instance, supporting Ukraine in the Russian war against Ukraine, specifically those who are also celebrating this very important day, which is not only important for Russia, as we know, but is important also for the Western allies who have been celebrating the victory over Nazi Germany, and they did not show up. As far as
sorry to interrupt you, but do
understood,
you think this is an act of convenience for these heads of state, for these leaders, or this is drawing a clear line saying we are not going to support you on this day because of the conflict?
it's drawing a clear line. I mean, we had actually, on behalf of Europe, only the participation of Slovakia's Prime Minister Fico. Obviously, Prime Minister Orban did not show up. We know why, because it would send a very wrong message, given the participation of Hungary on the wrong side in the Second World War. And aside of that, we had also the visit of Vučić, Alexander Vučić from Serbia, who has had quite solid and stable relationship with Russia for a very, very long time. You understand there the background is the NATO bombardment on Serbia. And basically, aside from that, we did not have really any kind of Western support during this parade. As far as I understood, there has been indirect messaging between the aides of Trump and Putin. So practically, Trump has indirectly sent his best wishes on this day to Putin, and mostly the messaging from the Victory Day parade was that Russia, together with China, this dragon bear modus operandi of strategic coordination, wants to look up to the global south. So there were leaders from Africa, from Asia, from Latin America. Brazil was there with President Lula. And the message is clear. We are focusing on the non-Western or anti-Western world, depending on what kind of ideology you would like to use. And we would like to deepen the relationships with these countries. And that is why it was logical to see more representatives from other parts of the world.
So we see that model that you just mentioned, but there's also a pushback, because by comparison, the European delegations met up in Lviv to show their support for Ukraine and announce the formation of War Crimes Tribunal targeting Russian officials. Do you think this signal is a signal strong enough for Russia, or the Kremlin feels, I would say, rather invincible?
I think that at this stage, Kremlin feels quite invincible. At the same time, it was important for the European partners to show collective support for Ukraine by pursuing legal accountability. With the launch of the War Crimes Tribunal, this was an important message. And as well as, of course, to further coordinate the military support for Ukraine, especially given the possibility, this is still unknown to us, but the possibility that the US might not be supporting Ukraine, especially in the military domain in the future. So in that sense, it was an important signal. It was the right signal, but again, what comes beyond signaling is, in my view, even more important. And right now, the focus lies on the 30-day ceasefire initiative. The US is still pushing, along with the European allies, such as France, Britain, Germany, to finalize this proposal for a 30-day ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia. We know for a fact that Russia so far has not been cooperating. And beyond the 30-day ceasefire, still the open question mark here is how exactly the military support for Ukraine will continue so that Ukraine is able to defend itself.
It is everyone's understanding that a red carpet was rolled out in front of Xi Jinping. My next question is, how concerned do you think that NATO and the EU should actually be about this strengthening bond between China and Russia?
I've been arguing for quite some time now that NATO, which is the institutional reminiscence that has dealt with the Communist Party and that has dealt with the totalitarian government once during the Cold War, during practically the Cold War between the West and the Soviet Union. has now all the toolbox means to tackle the new Communist Party in China and to tackle this new global challenge. And I would go a step further by claiming that, in my view, this is the most serious threat multiplier, namely these coordinations. It's not a strategic alliance, it's a modus operandi of strategic coordination in all systemically relevant domains. Meanwhile, we have still missing information about key domains such as defense cooperation, technological cooperation, space collaboration between these two powers. So what makes it so dangerous is not the fact that China is meanwhile global power number 2, but actually the way how China and Russia are coordinating their positions in various institutions around the world, in all these relevant organizations, how they are also creating non-Western organizations and are engaging with the Global South, and most importantly, the military domain, because practically, on the one hand, Europe and America are currently not on the same page, as you know, ideologically, and also in terms of geoeconomics, think of the tariffs war. And on the other hand, we have this such close, I wouldn't say alliance, but coordination. These two powers have never been that close to each other in the history of the bilateral relationship. And this is what makes it so unpredictable and dangerous.
Velina, thank you so much for joining me to comment on the events of today. Pleasure to have you as always on the program. Velina Shakarova, founder at the FACE Geopolitical Consultancy, was my guest.
Thank you very much.
And so this concludes World News Tonight, but please do stay tuned. We are back in just a moment with more news and features, and we'll see you there.